Cool. Now we're recording. Fantastic. And we'll go back to the presentation. Perfect. All right. So you guys are in a funky spot. So how to start freelancing online. Despite some of my confirmation emails, this is what you signed up for and this is what you're here for. So I'm so glad that you guys could join me for this today. There we go. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? You can see we have a really full schedule. I do anticipate that we'll probably go a little bit over in terms of Q&A, and I'm happy to stay on for an extra 15 minutes and do Q&A. So if you do have questions throughout, just put them in the chat, and then I'm going to pull up the chat at the end. I will, fair warning, I would love to, when I see your question, have you be the one to state it out loud and talk to you about it, and that way we can have a little conversation and make sure I'm answering your question, all those kinds of things. So what we're going to cover today: what types of services can you offer when you're marketing online? A lot of people have never done anything like this before. How do you market your services? How do you get the word out? What online platforms are available to you? We'll dig in a little bit to those. They have interesting, sometimes reputations in terms of people's perceptions about them versus if you've actually worked with them. I think the reality is quite different. We'll go over some really light, what are the basics of making a profile if you want to do it on those platforms, how to get your first clients, and then we will talk a little bit about raising prices, since I think that's very integral to just getting started in the beginning. Fantastic. So as I mentioned to everyone else, if you have to leave early, don't worry, all of this is being recorded. So there's two really important things that I have to say first is, because I personally invited people who have been laid off or furloughed, before you start charging anyone for anything, check your unemployment benefits. I would hate for you to make just enough to not be able to get those, but actually end up in a much worse financial situation. So do no harm. Check that out and know that situation before you start doing this if you are receiving some sort of benefit. And then also, the thing to remember about if you've never done any type of independent work is that you're responsible for your own taxes. I haven't found this to be extremely difficult, but at the same time, I can't personally tell you how much money you have to save because I'm not an accountant and everyone's tax bracket is different. So make sure you consult an accountant, consult a professional on that to figure out what percentage you have to put aside beforehand. The last thing you want is at the end to get a bill and not have saved for that. And I think that it's really easy to do if you have a separate account, but the amount is really something that you need to talk to a professional about. Alrighty, so, okay. Why am I offering this workshop? So if you guys know anything about me, I run a company called Bespoke Professional, and I'm a job search strategist. So I help people to find jobs. And whether that's resume writing with the writer and the copy editor that I employ as freelancers, or helping people figure out what their next move is. A lot of that is about trying to help people take the experiences they've had and figure out where they fit into a job. This is really similar in the sense of what jobs have you had or experiences have you had, and how can I take that and market that independently? It's a really similar process. I think more importantly, for me, the fact that I have worked on Upwork myself is what drove me to want to help people with this, because often I've had clients who said to me like, hey, I haven't been working for a year. Do you know anything about this? And helped them figure out how to market themselves while they're job searching. And that's worked out really well for them. There's so much I can tell you about this, and I don't want this to be too long, but the idea for me is really that I think I've always been looking for ways to make extra money. And in retrospect, I didn't know I would end up wanting to work for myself, but that became very clear over time. From the time I was 18, I sold Avon, so I had to figure out ways to do that. I had an amazing experience in college selling Cutco cutlery, and that was so instrumental and taught me so much. And I made a decent amount of money doing that as well. And to this day, I still love their products, and people I sold to still talk about how much they like them. And so a lot of that is thinking about how you can benefit other people. But really, what I found is that one of the big pivotal experiences that drove me to start my business was the fact that I made a big pivot. So I was a high school teacher for 8 years. I did 3 years at a public school in California.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out. Tiffany and I actually worked together a long time ago, so it's really nice to see her here. And then I did 5 years at a private school in Colombia as a high school teacher in South America. And when I decided, I started a business and then realized that I was hungry to take all the things that I love about teaching and apply that somewhere else. And so I got into tech. And I didn't really understand. It's weird because you're trying to market yourself for something that you don't really understand yet. But what I found is that it's amazing once you get into a new environment. You're like, I never realized how much this can bring the company money. I never realized how marketable this was until you get into it. And that's the essence of what I want to present to you today, is that you may think that you don't have like a skill that will work well online, but I believe that everyone does, and it's just a matter of figuring that out. Awesome. I am going to kind of stop to take questions around like 10 to the hour if we're not finished. And so I will make sure to come back to all of those things then. Okay. That goes back to what I'm imagining that people are thinking about this is, are you sure that I can do this? Let's talk about it. So I thought through all the things. For example, there's a specific client that inspired this because one day we got on and we were supposed to talk about, I don't know what it was. And she said, in between these corporate jobs, I have been doing some other stuff. She's been teaching yoga and things like that. She's like, I don't have that income coming in right now. I would love to be able to have something while I'm looking, right? Something temporary. And I said, you know what I would do? I said, and knowing her skill set, she'd also been a teacher. I said, I think that you have a lot of services you could offer through the Upwork platform. And then we talked about what that would look like. And then it got me thinking, as I saw these layoffs, there's so many people that are going through this. What can I do? Right. And this felt like something I was like, that a lot of times when I look at problems in the world that bother me, it's like, I feel so overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I'm like, this is something I know exactly what to do. So that's how this.
No, we're losing you.
You're losing me?
We got you.
Okay, perfect. We also, every person might have different sort of like audio experiences depending on your own personal internet. So thank you. Definitely tell me that, Tiffany, and then we'll put it out to other people to see if it's kind of like a universal thing that's happening with the audio. But yeah, I want to go through, if you're starting this and you're like, it feels like there's so many barriers to entry, to kind of address each of them, and specifically the ones that I've heard. So there are so many people online. Why would someone hire me? So whenever anyone's gone to these platforms like Upwork or Fiverr, these are platforms that someone can go on and say, I can do copy editing, I can do writing, I can, in my case, like train people on how to use Smartsheet, which is a software that I used to work at the company and train people on how to do it. But if you go online and you look at the fact that there's people offering these services at every level. So you may find that there are people offering the same service. Like you can find copy editors who charge, I don't know what the height of it is, but I know that it's like often 4 cents per word or something like that, which people probably make like $35 an hour plus on that easily. My price for Smartsheet training is $128 is what the customer pays per hour. And then you can see people who are coming from, countries where they don't need as much to live, who go on there on this international platform and they'll charge like $5 an hour or $3 an hour. And that can be really intimidating if you think that's what you're up against, right? But the thing is that there is a way for you to market yourself. And the way to think about it is how does someone decide that they want to hire you, whether it's for a platform or whether there's a service that you're offering. If someone's going to go onto like an Upwork platform, right, and look for a freelancer and say, I'm using this Smartsheet software, it's like a project management type software, and I need someone to help me with it, they're probably going to type in the word Smartsheet. So if you look at my profile, it's very personalized. All I do is Smartsheet versus people who do all these other things. That is going to give me an edge, right, over someone else who does a bunch of things. I am a Smartsheet expert. That is exactly what I do, right? The other thing about this is often people don't realize that they need something until they hear about it. So if you are, put yourself on a platform, but then you're putting out through LinkedIn that this is a service you're offering, people are like, wow, I didn't realize it, but like I could really use, someone to right now, I could totally use someone to teach me how to make gluten-free bread. That's like an example from my personal life. I'm like, oh, that's something I could really use right now. I'm like, I might not think that that's available for me, like a class or like a little workshop on that until I see it, right? And I'm going to hire the person that brought that to my attention. I'm not now going to be like, okay, what are the other options? It's like I'm most likely to hire someone who is in my network, lives in my area, that I have some affiliation with. So this is often, you can drive yourself crazy by looking at all the competition that's out there. But if you go through the process of thinking, how does someone decide to hire you? It's not, I look at every single person who offers that service. It's often, they found you through a referral, someone they know through Facebook, through LinkedIn, things like that. So this goes kind of the same lines, right? The competition is very cheap. How can I make real money? The first thing to note is, in my experiences I've had through Upwork specifically, there are many projects that are only available to US contractors. People have this, there often is so much available, people that are coming from other countries, because they understand, if I can earn US dollars, if I can earn euros, I'm going to make a lot more money for my cost of living. But as a result, that becomes overwhelming for people in the US. So often, to limit it, or to make sure that there's going to be no language barriers, which we know lots of people abroad do speak English really well, but not everyone realizes that or wants to go through the process of trying to vet that, they often will say, only want to hire someone in the US. And I think that applies to if you want to do something that's less techy, like if you wanted to offer a class on how to make gluten-free bread, I'm not going to probably hire someone or take someone's class if they're international. Like I would look for the person that I'm most affiliated with, right? Like a lot of people will look for someone in their region first, in their state, and then if they can't find that, look for someone in their same country. My abilities don't translate to an online offering. So this was the one that for the first, I decided I was going to do this workshop. I'd written up the whole thing, and someone, the woman who initially inspired this, I said, go tell the other people that have worked at some of the places you worked at that have been laid off, and tell them what questions, like let me know if they have any questions or holes that you can poke in this. Like, would they even go to this because maybe they'll feel like it doesn't apply to them? And so the best question that came up was, okay, the only thing I know how to do is cook. So how can I do that online? And I thought of two specific ways, and I'm going to get into them a little bit on the next slide, but I think that example is really important. So I thought, okay, first, what I think I would be, as a consumer up for doing right now, especially in the current environment versus normally, is if someone had a cooking class that was fairly small. So if it was either a private cooking lesson for like me and my husband, or if they said, oh, I'm going to do this cooking class, but there are like, 6 people maximum, that offers a personal experience. And if it's interactive over Zoom, that would be really fun. In preparation for this, I went to look for cooking classes online, and in a quick search, just spending 10 minutes, all the first things that came up were just videos. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. Like I've never done one of those cooking videos. I don't really watch cooking videos, but I have gone to a ravioli making class, and this was like physically, right? That was offered on Airbnb because my husband saw it and said, this looks really fun, let's go. Right now, since I can't leave my house, right? I can't go to someone else's house and learn how to make ravioli. If we saw that offering virtually, that's a good example of something that we would do, right? So there are different ways, and I'm going to go through what are kind of the 4 things to create this type of idea. And a bulk of what we're going to talk about today is what types of things can I offer, because I want you guys to get really creative. And then that particular question, really, I spent the whole, early of the weekend thinking like, okay, what about this and what about this, and just things that maybe everyone can do, but there's things that I could learn how to do myself, but I would much rather like take an online class or have an online lesson to learn how to do that thing, rather than like just look it up myself, because that's not fun. And we're all looking for entertainment right now too, right? And some engagement with people. Okay, so get creative about the services you offer. This is exactly what I've been getting into. So I want to take this cooking example and kind of circle back to the different, pull all of these together. So for cooking, if you're like, all I know how to do is cook. Okay, cool. So what is an offering you could do that would be appealing? One of the things we talked about is you could make it more personal. You could have a class, you could have a personal lesson, and those should be different prices, right? If I'm going to say 6 people max versus just you and personal, very different price points, and you can play with that. The other thing is figuring out one thing and doing it really well. So let's talk about the idea that you say, I am going to, and maybe you don't even know how to do it. So you're like, okay, cool, that's a great idea. I'm going to go out and learn how to make gluten-free bread. I'm pretty sure like I could figure it out, right? But, and that's going to be your offering. So one of the things I was thinking about the obstacle for me in making something new like that, and I've been making a lot of like new things outside of my comfort zone lately, is where do I get the ingredients? So there's like a ton of options for gluten-free flour, right? And I don't even know if that's how you say it, but there's different flour types. And I remember the first time I encountered one, I think I encountered it by accident at the grocery store and I was looking for something else and I bought it. But if I was looking to make gluten-free bread, I would want to know like what ingredients do I need and where can I get them? So you could take your offering up a notch, not only by having it be an interactive class, not only by having it be really niche and saying, I'm going to teach people how to make gluten-free bread. That's what I do. You could also go and say, I'm going to show you exactly where to get the ingredients. If you live in this region, you know, Trader Joe's has it, and here's what aisle it's in. And here, if you show pictures of what I'm looking for, right? Because sometimes I'm like, okay, I was looking for white miso paste the other day and I thought it would be in a jar and it was in like a plastic carton. And it took me like 10 minutes to find it at the grocery store, which is not super fun, you know, right now, right? So those are the kind of things that you can add that personal touch and take all the mental labor out of it for people. And that's what's going to make it fun and exciting. And like, wow, I can just show up. Someone's going to tell me where to get the ingredients and what I need. And then ahead of time and make sure I have them. And then from start to finish. And if I could contact you after, like, oh, it didn't turn out the way I wanted. What did I do wrong? Those are all things that are really going to up your offering, and you get one person to engage with you on that. And then you can get referrals and you can ask people to spread the word and all kinds of stuff. So that is kind of how you take something that might seem like anyone can do it and just make a personal offering that actually has a lot of market appeal. So what are some examples? I was thinking about 2 people I know, don't do this professionally, but have I know at least one of them has made money off of like creating different jewelry. And one of them, it was like she learned how to create certain types of Norwegian jewelry. And so that's like a really good niche. Obviously I have on here like how to repair broken necklaces. I don't even know how possible that is, but I think about that all the time. Like, oh, if that class existed right now, that'd be something I'd be interested in. And then I looked at the different platforms that are out there, and I'm going to go through those in a second to see what was available. So someone had like, I can draw a custom cartoon for you, or I can write song lyrics for you, and just kind of like fun stuff like that. I was thinking that I once had a freelancer go through the site that I like and just pick out stock photos. And I said, like, can you look for pictures like this, 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 and this? And so that I can use those, like the photo that I used for today's event. I had to go, like I only have so many in my bank that I already have. And so I went and found another one, and that can be really time consuming. Like that's a service you can offer for people that doesn't really require any skill, but that's something people really need. Digitize someone's to-do list or calendar. Especially if you know how to use a certain platform, and a lot of these platforms are free or cheap to use, like converting theirs like to Smartsheet, like that's something that people pay for, converting it to Trello, putting everything into their Google Calendar for them. Those are things that are important for people. And then of course, right now, a lot of people are at home with their children. I see a couple offerings for tutoring children or like lesson plans, but I don't see as much of that as I would expect to see. I think the need's really, really high. And even something that's like entertaining children, right? If you can plop the kids in front of a screen in terms of like a cartoon or like an educational video, but to actually have something that'd be interactive, I think would be really interesting and educational, especially knowing the educators and some of the talented people that are on here. I promise I'm gonna get to the Q&A. We're still doing very well for time. Okay, here is what I believe are the 4 really successful, the keys to successful offering. So number 1, you have to pick a niche. And what you can do is you don't have to pick one niche, but you can start with many. You can start with several. So instead of saying like, I can bake anything for you, what you want to do is say, I can teach you how to make gluten-free bread. I can teach you how to make whatever, stay in a theme, maybe like uh, other types of healthy, like a gluten-free pastry, and maybe it's like a vegan something something, right? And you have those 3 offerings and they're super, super specific. There's something really weird that happens because if your offering's really close to what someone wants, they'll often reach out to you because it's like, what would be more appealing to you if you were seeing this? Would you have all these people that are like, oh, I can teach you how to bake. I can teach you how to bake whatever you want. Like what people hear is that you're not an expert in anything. Whereas if you have 3 things that are all very specific, if someone's like, oh, she has gluten-free bread, but what I've been, buying is vegan bread. I wonder if she knows how to make that. And then you could do the research and say, let me, you could even you could even make it the first time and see if it turns out, and then say, yes, I can teach that. I've modified the recipe. And that class might even be more expensive. It's weird because we think that if we narrow too much, that's not going to attract people. But in reality, that's exactly what we have to do. And I can attest to this in 2 circumstances. One being obviously my own Upwork profile, which is all about Smartsheet. I worked for Smartsheet Corporate, and it's interesting because they have a lot of clients, but they've always been a very lean business. There aren't that many people out there that have that. But I've been really careful about I could expand that to other things, but I want to stay really niche. But another good example is I started my business thinking that, job search strategy, who's going to need help finding a job? I actually started because I knew like 1,500 people that all were in a very, very specific circumstance, and they had all moved to Seattle. Every single one of them, I believe, was a woman who'd moved to Seattle because her husband was recruited to work in tech. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start with that community. I think there's a need in that community. And it quickly expanded to, most of my clients are women. And I have these packaged offerings. Like if you go to the Bespoke Professional website, you'll see that like, I think I have 6 packages on there, but the top selling ones are resume writing and LinkedIn writing, and interview coaching, networking, messaging. I think those are the top 3. And it's very specific. So it's not like, oh, tell me what you need in your job search and I'm going to figure it out. No, because that people are like, you should know already, right? And so that's where having that really personalized offering comes from. Number 2, personal, that is like interactive. I do think this is a market in which you could create cooking classes and you could sell those online. I think that that's a little bit more complicated in terms of, you can't charge as much for them. And so I think that's a longer play in terms of getting people on board. My cat's actually playing with that toy. Can you hear that? I'm going to grab it from her. Hold on. She has one of those like flat tracks that the ball goes round and round, and she's so funny. She'll play with that for like 20 minutes straight and just hit the ball and then hit the ball the other direction. It makes like a really funny noise. I don't know if you could hear it. When I say personal, part of what I mean is interactive. So there's a need for that right now because people are bored. People have to do stuff at home. It's like if in the past they would have gone to a cooking class to entertain themselves, physically they can't do that, right? So having something that's interactive is going to allow you to have a higher price point, and if you can make money more quickly with a smaller audience. You don't have to have like a big Instagram following or anything like that in order to offer that. Whereas if you start a podcast, or which a lot of those are traditionally free, but if you start some sort of courses online, it's just going to take longer. I wouldn't discourage you from doing that, but if you need money now, I think the way to go is have something that's more interactive, more customized, more personal, and that is a better way to make money faster. The current needs, like I was saying, I do think that people are more likely to do something online that they wouldn't have done before, which is an advantage in this. And I don't think people are going to be very quick to pivot into something like this for all the reasons we're talking about. People don't realize that they're capable of this and that they would be able to do it. They just don't know what they don't know. But the needs right now are, right, like exercise. Like if you have been teaching yoga, teaching any sort of exercise class, like you can set that up in Zoom. people, like they're at home with their kids a lot, right? So what are the things that can help take things off their plate, especially if it comes to things that are marketed toward the kids? And finally, the last one, attach yourself to revenue. A lot of things I've been talking about are very personal in terms of something I do for fun or entertaining. Something to keep in mind is offering business services that are, people can make money from what you're doing as well. So let me give you an example. I recently had someone reach out to me and say, like, do you need any digital marketing services? And I've thought a lot over, the 2 years of my business about hiring someone to help me with that. There's a lot of reasons not to do that, but the reason it's the biggest risk is it's very hard to say whether the investment I'm making in that person's actually gonna help me make money. But there are 2 places that I invested, and I had like a light bulb moment that I needed to hire a specific person. And you can take this, why I felt that need, and apply that and think about who else might be out there like me. So I realized that I needed a writer. I write a ton of resumes and I do a ton of work with my clients to get the information out. So I do like spend 3 hours plus with them, but then I take all the information and I write, and writing, it takes me a really, really long time. And as I get better at it, it's like longer and longer and longer. And so I thought, well, if this is what I charge for a resume and LinkedIn profile, it's going to pay for itself, because my writer is only going to get paid for things I'm getting paid on. And that's in the consulting world, what we call billable work, right? So she only does billable work. I don't have her write things for marketing because it's a bigger risk. Like I can't quantify if it's worth it or not. And so she pays for herself. If I sell 8 resumes and she writes 8 resumes, I know exactly how much money I'm spending, how much I'm getting off of that. It's harder when you're new to think about that, but that's why I threw out examples of like helping someone choose stock photos, helping someone organize stock photos. I think there was something else on that list as well, but thinking about services that you can offer that are something someone else can help make money off of that already has that. So like, my writer doesn't have any desire to go out and start a resume writing business on her own. She doesn't live in the US, so that would be harder for her. She is from the States, but also like she doesn't want to go market herself and do all that. She just wants to like take in the work and do that. So that's one thing you can do. And I think these platforms might give you some ideas about things that are out there that you might be able to offer specifically to business and offer to businesses. Because we know that even though there are businesses that are really struggling right now, there are also businesses that are really thriving right now. Okay, what are the platforms that are available to you? The 2 that I think people think of right away are Fiverr and Upwork. Upwork is one I have experience about, and I'm going to go into that a little bit. I don't know a lot about Fiverr. I think it is very similar, but I did read an article once about a woman who started out, I think she was doing writing. And so doing like writing for people, like marketing copy. And she said she started out charging like, I want to say it came out to like $10 an hour or less. And then she now, I think, is making something like 6 figures a year off this. And so she kind of talked about the fact that over time, she was able to make more and more money. And so I know that there are people out there that are making really good money on Fiverr. I have had an excellent experience with Upwork, and I'd love to tell you that story. So how I got into Upwork was I had kind of I don't remember exactly what's happened, but I had these moments in my career that led to my business where I was kind of like dragging my feet. Like I really wanted to start my business, but I was kind of scared to do that and didn't know logistically how I was going to be able to like start it and make money right away and things like that. But I was doing some consulting work. I was hired by a consulting firm to do some consulting work for Microsoft. I had done consulting work for Microsoft in the past, and that project ended very abruptly. And so I was talking to my friend. He's his first name. I don't know if anyone here knows him, but his name is Paul. And Paul had moved abroad to study his MBA, and his wife had gotten a job abroad. And he had started to, he also worked at Smartsheet with me. So he had started to do this and put himself out there. And he was talking about how much like he was charging per hour. And I was like, that sounds really great. And what happened is I believe we talked around the time that I had just really early days of my business, and my initial revenue model for my job search business was something that it was gonna take a while to make money. And so I'm like, great, I'm gonna do this on the side as well. And I couldn't believe how easy it was, because for one thing, all of my LinkedIn profile, my marketing was toward the job search stuff. And that was really important to not mess with that to me. So there's like this whole other world where in Upwork, if you look at me, I'm a Smartsheet consultant and trainer. If you look at me on LinkedIn, that's not even there. And that's very intentional because I just want to market myself toward this audience, right? But what that tells you is there's no marketing I'm doing. And the way that I did it personally was I just wanted to make a little extra cash, and I wanted to be able to quickly like look for jobs if, you know, I had a bad month in my business and that kind of thing. And so I mostly let people come to me. And what happens as a result of that is I probably don't work as many jobs as other people do, but I don't have to spend any time like hunting for them. I'm surprised how many people find me. And I think, I don't know if you guys, if you start your freelance profile, you'll be able to see my freelance profile, but it's out there currently, right? And I believe it shows me having 2 open projects. There's one woman that like calls me every month and I talk her through some things and that's it. And it's like, feels like the easiest work for me that I've done because I already know that space. And then kind of same, I have a new client and I'm really picky about who I take on because I don't really need that much extra work, but I'd like to have that buffer. You never know when things like this are going to happen. And I talked to him and I was like, I just really like this guy. And in same kind of thing, right? Like we do meetings and I take notes and I say, I think you should do this next. And it's just been a really easy way that people come to me. I don't know as much about going out there and looking for work and how, like you can apply as well. You can look through all the jobs that are out there. But we'll kind of talk through how to maximize pricing and a little bit about that. Thumbtack's a really interesting one. I saw some of the quirky offerings on Fiverr. I suspect that on Fiverr and maybe even on Upwork, you could do things like offer people who are like, need help converting to a gluten diet and need to learn, you know, I think you can offer those kind of things. I haven't seen those kind of offerings on there. Thumbtack is one where, and I know less about how it works as a freelancer. I use it as a customer. So someone in my family wanted to find a personal trainer, but like was so lost about like, well, where do I find a personal trainer that's going to be independent? And so I think I just Googled like personal trainer, Seattle, I don't know. And a Thumbtack came up and I was like, cool. And I started a profile and then I put like my job out there and I was like, I want like to hire a personal trainer, like in the name of this other person, blah, blah. And like 3 or 4 people applied to it. And we like found the perfect personal trainer because it gives you an example of it goes back to my niche thing. Everyone who reached out to us and said, this is my rate and what you want to do was like super, super buff, like crazy, like muscle per people. Like they look like they could do those like competitions, except for one guy and he looked strong. But if you go to his website, his dad had written a story about how he had, he was born with cerebral palsy, and as a kid, he really struggled to do things physically, and he became a personal trainer. He started training, doing marathons and Ironmans and stuff himself, and became a personal trainer and specializes in helping people who have like back problems and other issues. I was like, that's our guy, right? Like that guy, that's so interesting. And he was just a pleasure for this person to work with. So I think Thumbtack's a place where it's just kind of like you can offer anything. You'll have to explore that a little bit, but there are other sites out there too. And some of them might have like 90% people offering construction work for your home. I did also hire a contractor to replace a door on Thumbtack as well. But I just had really good experiences with it as a consumer. And then this is kind of a funny one, like Eventbrite. Like everyone here used Eventbrite to get their ticket. What's really cool about Eventbrite, and this is true about Fiverr and Upwork, I don't know about Thumbtack, is they handle all the money for you. So, you know, I say, okay, I've done events on Eventbrite where it's like, this is gonna be 30 bucks or 50 bucks. And then Eventbrite says, okay, we're gonna charge this much extra. Do you want the ticket holder to pay for that or do you wanna pay for that? And then it's really slick, like they send you a bill at the end of that calendar month. And so I really would encourage you to use a platform, even if you think that your service doesn't. Like if I'm you, I'm using a platform, and then depending on how much you want to make money and how how much you want to make. You can also advertise your own services, and you can use like PayPal for Business or things like that to take money in. I love PayPal for Business. That's what I use. People can pay with credit cards. They don't have to have a PayPal account. It's super easy. They do take a percentage, and Upwork takes a percentage, Fiverr takes a percentage. For me, it's been totally worth it. And I just work that into my prices, right? I'm like, if I'm going to be paying 10% to them, I'm going to take into account how much money I need to make. And the cool thing about Upwork specifically, I think all of these are very fair in the way that they do it. Since Upwork has brought me so many clients and I haven't had to go looking for them, up to I think it's the first $500 of a project, they take 20% and then it drops to 10%. So when you work with someone long-term, you start paying them less. And I think that that's fair. Upwork also guarantees that I'm going to get paid. They track my work and my hours and they take screenshots, which when my friend told me about that, I thought that sounded kind of creepy. I love it because there's no discussion. There's no negotiation. There's nothing like I put those hours in and I get paid for those hours. And the client, if they try to say like, I'm not paying for that, Upwork will, because you have to be doing it hourly and you have to be using their tracker. But if you're using their tracker, then they guarantee you'll get paid for it and they back it up. So for me, it just makes it so easy. These are great places to start. It doesn't mean you can't offer your services on Upwork, for example, and offer it personally. What you want to make sure you're doing is if you're doing your own marketing, I wouldn't necessarily push them to Upwork. Have Upwork be your marketing. And then if you're offering them personally, I would probably just set up a PayPal for Business account. And if you're going to run your own classes, maybe you can do that through Eventbrite or you can do it through PayPal, and then that's going to allow you to earn a bigger percentage off the things that you do your own marketing on. And then when Upwork's doing the marketing for you, you're going to make less, but you're not going to have to do as much work. So that is a lot of information. I anticipate we'll probably have questions about that. Throw the questions in the Q&A if you have them. If anyone got on late, it looks like some people did. If you end up having to get off exactly at the hour because you have another meeting or something like that, this is all being recorded right now, and I'm going to send it out after within 24 hours or so. So don't hesitate to get off when you need to, but I will make sure to take some questions here before the end of the hour, and kind of in the order in which they came in. Okay, how to make a profile. I'm going to keep this really light. It really is in line with the things that I've said. In your profile, you want to say, here's the things I specialize in, and here are my offerings. I actually wrote a profile for someone the other day, and I pulled mine up, and in my head, mine was like, if you'd printed it out, it would have been like a page of paper. When I looked at it, if you printed that out, it wouldn't even been like a fifth of a page of paper. It was like 2 little paragraphs. And it was like, I worked at Smartsheet Corporate. I specialize in training people in Smartsheet. I can help you do these 3 things, right? And so if you don't have a lot of experience in something, if you're going to teach me how to make gluten-free bread or teach me how to make a necklace, or you are going to, help me find stock photos, I don't really care what your experience is. I want to know what you do specifically. And that's where those specifics give you a lot of power. So focus on, if you don't have a lot of experience in something, focus on what you offer and say, like, these are my 3 offerings. That in itself is going to help. Keep in mind, this is a search engine. So people are typing in keywords. What keywords are going to draw people to you specifically versus someone else? And often it is just as simple as saying my 3 specific offerings, right? Or it can be more general. It could be anyone who needs to learn how to switch to a vegetarian diet, a vegan diet, a gluten-free diet. I can walk you through all of that. And then you can have specific offerings and then make it even stronger to say, like, we can do 1 session or 2 sessions just on this aspect, just on this. We can do specific meals. But that's like a really specific thing of how to convert someone to a specific diet. That's the kind of thing that draws people in. And if that's you, I don't necessarily care what background you have. If you are that specific, I kind of assume like, oh, this person has been eat, sleeping, and breathing this thing. They're going to be able to help me with it. And just, I'm hiring you because the amount of time and energy it would take me to figure it out on my own isn't worth it. Or if I'm asking you if what you specialize in, finding beautiful stock photos, and maybe I even know I have resources for that, right? And maybe I'm like, I just need you to look through them and find the ones and organize them nicely, right? I don't care about what your background is. I want to know your offering. And I might not even have thought to hire someone to do that until I saw you on Facebook offering that and your friend, put your post up or whatever. So make your profile about what you offer, make it really specific. And you'll see examples out there. There's a ton of great examples out there, and you can tell how much other people have been hired. So you can go out there and say, what other profiles are available for this type of thing? And how can I be more specific? And what people have had success, and you can borrow ideas from them, right? It's something that is totally acceptable to do. Okay. How to get your first client. This is where Paul was a huge resource to me, right? Because I thought, okay, I'm going to put up this profile in Upwork, because that was my plan, right? Upwork was the thing. And I'm like, how am I going to get someone when I have no ratings yet, right? Because it looks at job completion rate. Did you complete the job that was asked? And that's kind of your rating. So what Paul said is, he said, I did one project, I started out lower than I thought I should, because people are more willing to take a risk on you if it's a little bit low. And then he's like, as soon as I did my first couple projects, I raised my prices, right? So we're kind of skipping ahead to, what we're going to talk about next is when to raise your prices. But that is one way to do it. Another thing you can do is, normally I would suggest that if you're going to start having a class, and I want to keep going with this, like you're going to have how to make gluten-free bread workshop, you're going to limit it to 6 participants, and you're going to give everyone like very specific instructions about the ingredients they need to buy ahead of time, where to get those, that kind of thing. If you're going to do that, normally what I'd say is, if you're going to market it yourself, don't put it through a platform, like use PayPal for Business, because you're going to be able to keep a higher percentage than if you do it through Upwork, right? However, if you can get someone to hire you, right, and your first price can be a lot lower, and you run it through the Upwork platform or the Fiverr platform, or even I believe Thumbtack works that way as well, and you complete that, be honest about it. Ask someone if they will hire you for this, or find someone through a network who will do this. And you can say, I'm going to offer this 3 times for free or for this price, and you be very clear. You can even say, I've seen people do this really masterfully, where it's either a drawing, so that you can say like, I'm going to give this offering away for free 3 times or 5 times, something small enough that you can. And then from that, you actually get people's emails, and you start emailing them and marketing them toward if they didn't win. And you can say like, oh, you didn't win this for free, but like, for this week, I'm offering it for this like 50% off. And then you get some people to come in at that price and kind of go that direction. So you can start to build clientele that way. In addition, I would have your first person run through Upwork, run through your platform, because now you have 100% completion. And then now you can market to other people over here. And once you have that first one, you can raise your price a little bit and then go from there. So those are my kind of like, run a drawing and have people enter that. But make sure that if you're going to run a drawing, you get everyone's email, and then you can email them every time you have like a new product, or you want to run like a class or something like that. And then another way you can do that, one that I saw this done really masterfully, is a woman in my co-working community. She said, I want to build up my digital marketing portfolio, or whatever it is. And she put out a Google form that said, what do you need? Or like, would you use one of these 3 services, and how much would you pay? And then she only contacted the ones who offered to pay the most. So I thought that, like, you name your price. And so that was beautifully done, right? She didn't specify to us how many she was going to take, but it's like, if 5 people give you a price that you could do and you can make money off of, cool. That one can be a little bit weird. You don't want to let people name their price when you get better at this, because you want to establish the value, and you want to say, this is what I charge, and it's not a negotiable thing. But that is one way to help get your first clients, and to have someone do it, complete it, and give you the recommendation. And it's 100% honest if you did complete it from them. And I would encourage you to do that, so that they can actually say, what I liked about this class was, or what I liked about this workshop was, or what I liked about this offering was specifically. That's the kind of recommendation that's going to help you get your second client and your third client. Awesome. So when to raise your prices? I would say frequently. So this is the thing that scares people, is they're like, I'm always going to have a low price. And if you feel empowered and you look out and you're like, I think I can get people to pay this for me, by all means. Like, I think I had someone when I first started my business telling me that I couldn't start my business because I'd never been a recruiter. And I was like, I proved that one really wrong. I was like, I was a hiring manager. I worked very closely with a recruiter. Like I felt like I knew my stuff and it worked out for me. Right. But I remember her specifically saying to me like, well, you're going to have to start lower. And I was like, I'm going to start where I feel like the market is. And that worked for me. At the same time, I think when I started like my job search business, I think my hourly was like 98. And I think I realized really quickly that there were a lot of people willing to pay that. And I went up to like 120. And then I went to 150, and this is like an hourly thing. And then around that time also, I went up to like a 3-hour minimum, 4-hour minimum. So I have been constantly raising my prices in my business. And I also did that on Upwork, right? Because once I had 100% completion rate and I had some really good reviews, right away, they're comparing you who has great reviews, someone who doesn't have any reviews, you can charge a premium for that. And that is less risk, and risk is the way people lose money. So I would say try that, and you can do experiments, right? You can, if you're first offering, you find that no one's taking you up on it, like it gets tricky sometimes to think about like, why aren't people, is the price there? It might not be the price. It might be that your profile isn't niche enough, right? But I think sometimes often starting low is a way to kind of help you experiment with it. And then if you raise your price and then realize that you raise it by too much, you can always go back down, right? So this is something, people hire you based on a price that you've given. You should be fair across the board consistently. But if that's your price for a month, you're totally within your realm to raise that next month, or to say, I realize that was too much, I'm going to come back down from that. And you can run sales and things like that as well. The other thing I didn't put a slide in for is, if some of you are looking to go the route where you are going to market your own things, and if it's going to be on the more personalized side, I would say if you're starting to get to the point where you're like $75 an hour or more, one thing that I've always done in my job search business, and I also do this in my Smartsheet as well, Smartsheet business, is I hold free, what I call discovery calls with people to learn about their needs. And this has really helped me evolve my business, because I understand kind of like why people hire me. And I can also hear why a lot of times on that call, I'm like, this person isn't going to hire me because they're not ready to change jobs, or, they don't know me well enough. Like they didn't come in from a referral and they haven't been to any of my events. And, they met me through a webinar where we didn't really get to have any one-on-one interaction. And so for them, the leap to a personalized service is too much. Like it would make more sense for them to buy a course from me or do a group environment thing. But I've learned a lot about my clients that way. And so that's something you can think about. You might not be able at some of the lower price points to be able to give people that 30 minutes or 15 minutes personalized in the future. But early on, that's something people really like. And that's a good way to win people over. So that is something to think about in terms of the more personalized your service is going to be. If you can get on the phone with them and say, they're like, I'm interested in buying this from you. Let's get on a call and figure out, let's customize this a little bit to your needs. And people really like that. So I have given you a ton of information over a short amount of time, and we've really run the range of this. So I am going to now go into the questions. And let me see if I can figure out, I am going to hit stop share for the moment because I need to see the chat. Okay, great. So I'm just going to, you'll see me going through the chat. I saw a bunch of questions here, I thought, or maybe those were people joining. What questions do you guys have? Feel free to put those into the chat right now. I don't think we have any yet. Oh, wait. I know you gotta have some. Hi, Basil, do you have a question? No? No questions? Thanks. You are very welcome. All right. I'm going to give you guys the wrap up. And if you think of anything while I'm talking, feel free to put that in the chat box. Thank you guys so much for coming. I think even though your time and attention is valuable, and that is a way that you've paid me. So I really appreciate the fact that you have given me your time and attention. And the way that I kind of operate, and I think this is really important in life in general, we think of only business owners or salespeople doing this, but is to always be giving to other people. If you are a Friends fan, it's like there is no unselfish effort, because it always makes you feel good, right? But I am always happy to provide these things for the community. And I think it's really important that all of you leverage your networks and leverage people around you to help you. People want to help. And I believe strongly, there's a quote from How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie that says, the best way to make a friend is to do something nice for someone else. But the second best way to make a friend is let someone else do something nice for you. And so I'm going to really encourage you guys to go out and leverage your networks. And you know what that difference is, right? You know what type of ask, like asking your friend, like, hey, would you be my first customer and pay me $5 to do this, or whatever, right? What type of ask, or like, would you be able to just repost this on Facebook? Those are the type of asks that, if you leave it open-ended and you let people opt into it, it's going to go over well, and other people are going to be able to help you. If you want to say thank you to me for providing this for you guys, I would love it if you would tell people about and spread the word in terms of like my LinkedIn profile, my personal LinkedIn profile. I do a lot of marketing there for my business and business services, and then also my Instagram, Bespoke Professional. So if you felt like you got a lot of value out of this today and you want to say thank you, that would be an amazing way to do it. I would really, really appreciate that. Awesome. I see 2 questions. So one question, Basil said, is there any specific websites for regions like the Middle East? I don't know about websites for specific regions. You could probably research that, but I know that there are people on Upwork who work all over the world. My first Smartsheet client, who he was in Texas, and he hired me to help with to set up his Smartsheet. He owns a flooring company. Most of his project managers lived in another country, and I'm escaping me what it is, but it is in Asia. So he had project managers who were like I think they were, I don't know if they're full-time employees, but they were doing a ton of work for him. It wasn't just like a thing here and a thing there. His project managers were from other countries. So I know that even though Upwork sometimes says US contractors only, if you're in the Middle East and you are on Upwork, you definitely can get work. The question from Deanna is, how do you figure out your specialization? Deanna, can you expand on that at all? Because I think you kind of think about, I kind of gave you some ideas of special things. Is it like, if you know one thing, like how do you further specialize?
Hi. So let me explain myself
Please.
on this question. So speaking from my own experience, I've been in Upwork for a long time. I have to say I do little, if nothing, to move forward on these like tools to land clients. But like I'm an industrial designer, and I have lots of skills like visual design. I can do logos, I can do illustrations, I can do animations, I can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
And since I've been trying to get into UX design lately, I've been building up some more skills. So at this point, I feel like I know a bunch of stuff, but I don't specialize in anything. And it's hard for me to go in this freelance to these freelance platforms and find people that can show that they've been doing something for a long time.
Yeah.
So if I compare myself to this type of talent, I feel like I'm in a disadvantage maybe, because it's like, hey, she knows a lot of things, but somehow she's not proving that she knows and she's capable of doing this. And
Yeah.
as you said previously, it is better for you to specialize in something, and then people will trust you more, and they will kind of, trust you.
Yeah. So your question is like, how do you come up with like those specialized offerings, like in your case, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I think it takes some experimentation. And I think the best way is to think about like how I did that in my job search business. Um, I think there, it's really, I really respect people who are like, I'm never going to do any free work at all. I don't know how I would have kind of gotten to where I'm with my business without doing free work, like having friends ask me to present or run workshops for their groups and things like that. Early on, I didn't charge for those things. Um, Something that I kept hearing over and over again was like about resumes. And initially, my feeling was that resumes weren't as important as people thought they were. And it's really funny because what ended up happening is I'm like, okay, what do people need versus what do they want? And since resumes was always the thing that people were asking the most about, I'm like, what do I think that people really need from this? And so what I noticed is that people weren't putting things on their resume that were really impactful for them. Like I'd say, like, tell me about this bullet here, and it didn't say much. And then the story they'd tell me was amazing. So over time, I realized that I took what they needed and what I wanted to give them, because the marriage of those two things is the difference of you need to pull in the client, you need to give them what they want, but then giving them what they need is they're like, I didn't even realize how impactful this was going to be. Or in my case, it's not about writing a good resume, it's about them getting a job. And so when they get a job, that's when I get the referral, right? Is usually after the job they've gotten it, and they come back and tell me like, wow, I'm getting so many people reaching out to me on LinkedIn, or like the people I'm networking with are loving this. And so for you, I think you've nailed it in the way that you just said that. To me, it's not about the fact that to show that you have this experience. It's about that when you say that you're good at everything, people hear you're not good at anything. And I say that really bluntly because we have this idea that more is better, and it's actually really confusing. So if someone says, I need a logo, and I want a logo, I'm trying to think of something that'd be like very specific. Like I want a feminine logo, for example. If I go to your profile and you're like, I do logo and I do all these things, and then someone else says, I specialize in doing feminine logos, right? Feminine looking logos, whatever that means. I'm going to talk to her first, right? Or him first before I talk to you, because you didn't speak to me. So I think the first place to start is to guess, hypothesize, do some research. And the key is like, you don't need to do a lot of research, just kind of put 3 specific things out there, and then very, very specific, and have those be your offerings, and then go from there. So have one be like a specific type of logo, have one be, what are the things that you like to do the best, and then where do you think the need is, and have 3 packages that you offer. And by having those 3 specific offerings, you will, when people come to me and they're like, I need, like, networking messaging is like a thing that you don't see a lot of people offering. That's one of my number 1 selling packages. So people like, networking messaging, yes, that's exactly what I need. I'm networking and I'm realizing that when I talk to people, it's not getting any traction, or like I do a coffee date and nothing happens, right? Or I reach out to someone and they don't respond. And so I clearly need to get my networking messaging correct. Other people don't have that offering and I have it. So they're probably going to come to me for that, because I eat, sleep, and breathe that every day. I know that it's a lot of testing. Do you think that that's helpful to you, Deanna? Did I answer your question?
Thank you, Lynn. Yes, you absolutely answered my question, because I think that's one of the things that take the most of your time, like how you really narrow and focus on one thing, or maybe just 3 things, as you said, offer. Like next time, I'm thinking about my next interview, or maybe if I go freelancer or whatever I'm doing next, it's really, really best for me to focus and don't say, hey, I can do from A to Z. It's just, hey, this is what I'm really good at, and just name 3 things, because everything else comes with the package, I think. And especially for designers, I know I'm not the only one. You have to learn a lot of things, a bunch of tools, a bunch of trends. Like there are new tools coming up every day, and I've realized that in tech is what is trending right now, and you kind of have to play with that. So when you say like, yeah, I know everything, and then you end up doing nothing, I will need to narrow it. And thank you for your answer. That was a good example on how to get the best results.
Awesome. It's very counterintuitive because people might come to you saying, and this happens to me, right? People come to me saying, I think of an example where someone came to me saying, I need a resume. And I looked at her resume and what she's done. And I'm like, we can do that if you want to, but I don't think that's the best way to use our time. I think we should do networking messaging, and here's why. And I moved her to something else. So that might happen where people might come to you thinking they want a very specific package, and you actually are like, you need this. And maybe the thing that they need is not the thing that was in your 3 specific packages, and you're really good at it anyways. But somehow it's about attracting them, right? It's about bringing them in and saying, like, again, it speaks to them. And part of that is just in logistically, if people type in a keyword, if they type in feminine logo, you might not even pop up as an option. Or if you do, if whatever they're type in, like, they see this person who's speaking to them more specifically and the ones that aren't, and they're going to pick the person speaking to them more specifically. All right. You guys are very shy with your questions overall. So I think that I've answered all of them. Thank you so much for attending. Look for my email that's going to come up in the next 24 hours or so. And like I said, if you can spread the word, if you feel like you got great value out of this, please do. But I look forward to hopefully come into contact with you in the future. And if this stuff works for you or doesn't work for you, either way, please let me know. And I would really like to hear about how this journey goes for you guys. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and take care of yourselves.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.